Hey, this is Elijah with the Oxygen team, and in this video we're going to have a little bit of fun and we're going to try to rebuild the Elementor landing page in Oxygen. This is kind of a fun exercise just to see Oxygen's power and flexibility and what the real workflow of working with Oxygen is like. So here we are on Elementor's landing page, and we'll just do a quick run through of the elements we'll be tackling. So we've got a sticky header that stays in place as we scroll, a logo, a menu with some nice drop downs, my account button, and a download button. Next, we've got a big section with a background image, heading, subheading, button, a looped video that's embedded in this section, and then some columns with some information. And we're going to, at the very least, be doing the header and this top section, but we might also tackle some of this stuff down here, which is just some informational stuff. Okay, so let's get started by jumping over to Oxygen, and we're going to edit just a blank page. Normally, if you were rebuilding this to be used as an actual website, you would want to build it using Oxygen's templating system. But since we're just trying to replicate something, we're just going to build it all on a single page. All right, so when I'm working with Oxygen, what I like to do is drop in the basic structure first and worry about styling later. So we need a header, which we're going to use Header Builder because we need the sticky functionality that Header Builder brings. In that header, we're going to have a logo, a menu, and a couple of links off to the right-hand side. So let's start with that. So let's go to Add, type header in the search, and click Header Builder. Perfect. So for our logo, we're going to use an image. Let's click Add, go to Image, click that, and I believe I have the image already. I do not, so let's go grab it from their site. It's this little logo here. So we're going to save the image as save. I'll throw it up in here. And then we will jump back over and upload that. Perfect. Hit select image, and we want to see what size they have this image at, so we're going to right click and inspect it. And in Chrome DevTools, if you're inspecting an element and you need to see some properties, you can hit the computed tab, which is a little easier for you to see sizing and spacing. So this is 45 by 45 pixels. So let's go over and just set that 45 by 45. Perfect. Now let's add our menu and drop that in. And then we're going to use a couple of link wrappers for the buttons on the right hand side over here. So we've got my account and download. So let's add 2 link wrappers. Well, actually we'll start with one, style it a bit, and then duplicate it and adjust the styling. So let's add a link wrapper and add some text. Perfect. Okay, let's start with these link wrappers on the right hand side because these are going to be a little quicker to do than the menu. So let's select the link wrapper itself and let's go over here and look at what they've got going on. There's no real hover effect. There's no outlines, anything like that, just a basic link wrapper. We do have some padding and some margin that we'll need on this other one, but for this first one, we can stay pretty basic. We just need to change the text color to kind of a mid-gray. So let's go in and with the link wrapper selected, we'll go to Advanced Typography. And let's just pick a gray that looks about right. That looks close enough. And let's go ahead and save that by clicking the little world icon. And we're going to save this as mid-gray so that we can use it in other places like the menu element. So we have that. We also need to change the font size, I would say. I think like 14 pixels. Yeah, 14 pixels looks a lot closer. Then we're going to duplicate this and we're going to make this this download button. So let's go ahead and change the text. Great. Select the link wrapper. Let's go over here and look at this. We've got maybe 10 pixels of padding on the top. Well, we can inspect it and see exactly what everything is. So let's look here at the computed. we've got 10 on all sides, it looks like, a 2 pixel border with, I think it has a 100 pixel radius. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's go to advanced size and spacing and do 10 pixels of padding on all sides. And they may have a width or something applied to this. So I'm going to add some more left and right padding to get it to look a little bit more similar. So let's do 25 left and right. And then we're going to go to advanced typography, and we're going to change the text color to a green. So let's try to match this green. I've got a extension called Colorzilla that lets me pick colors from the page. So I'm going to use that and grab this green, and we can just paste that in there, and then we'll save it as a global color called green. Perfect. And then we want to set this text transform to uppercase. Now let's go to advanced borders. Let's add a green border that's 2 pixels wide and solid and has 100 border radius. All right, that's looking pretty close. It's a little too tall, I think. So probably because our padding is a bit much. So let's go to advanced size and spacing and do like 5 pixels padding top and bottom. That's closer. It's not quite as wide, but we're approximating here. Let's go back, and we need to make it turn green on hover. So what we'll do is we'll select that button, or the link wrapper, and click the state button here next to the ID and go to hover. And while this thing is hovered, we want the background to be green. And we want, under advanced typography, the text color to be white. And then if we go back to the original state and go to advanced effects and transition, there it is, we're going to do a 0.2 second transition so that it fades between those states. So there's that button. Now we need to move these 2 text links that we just created over to the right hand side. So the header builder has row left, row center, and row right. We want these both to go to row right. Perfect. And then we'll add a little bit of left margin to this green button. So go to advanced size and spacing and add, say, 25 pixels left margin. Okay, perfect. So that looks good. Now we need to start styling our menu element. So let's go over here to the menu element. And the first thing we're going to do is try to get this typography right. So let's change it to the mid-gray, change the font size to 14 pixels. And let's go over and just take a quick look. A hover effect is just that the text color changes. And there's a cool looking drop down there with that kind of little arrow effect. So let's jump over and get rid of these other hover effects we have going on. So we don't want the background to change. We don't want the border to appear when you hover. So we're going to go to hover and active, and we're going to remove the hover background color and remove the border top. And then we want the hover text color to be this pink color. So I'm just going to grab this from the logo, I think, and copy that over. And we'll save that as a global color. So now if we hover over it, we get the pink color. We're also going to set the transition duration to 0.2 seconds. That looks pretty good. I think we also need some spacing on the left-hand side to get it closer to what they have going on here. So let's add something like, I don't know, 15 pixels of margin and see if that looks a little closer. Okay, so that's good enough for now. We'll do some final adjustments later on. So now we need to take a look at this drop-down menu. We're going to have to do some of this with some custom CSS, which is super easy to implement in Oxygen. So first, let's take a look at what they have going on for their drop-down menu. So we've got a box shadow, some rounded corners, and this little arrow at the very top. So let's jump over to Oxygen and let's go to Manage Style Sheets, and let's add a new style sheet called Custom CSS because we may have to do a few more things in here. So to figure out which selectors we need to use, let's jump over to the front end and use the Chrome DevTools to find the elements that we want to edit. So let's inspect this. And let's look through. We have a menu, and then we have this submenu. I believe that's what we're going to want to move down a little bit below the header. So let's look at our selectors over here on the right hand side, and we'll just copy this entire selector over and use that to write our new CSS rule. So we need to move it down, and let's unlock the zoom there so we can see what we're doing. First, we need to move it down. I'm also going to add a section below the header with a different background color so I can see what's going on here. Okay, so we want that thing to move down to have a little bit of space above it and below its parent link. So let's jump over to our custom CSS and let's adjust the top margin. So margin top, let's try like 24 pixels and see what that looks like. Okay, that's a little far maybe, but once we get that arrow in there, it should be okay. And then we want our corners to be rounded. I'm thinking they're using about a 4 pixel radius. So let's do border radius 4 pixels and take a look. Okay, looks pretty close. And then we need a box shadow. So let's jump over and see what they're doing for their box shadow. So if we right click and inspect this element, we should see a submenu here. That's it. And I believe, let's look, so they're actually using a filter instead of box shadow, but we can kind of copy these settings, 0013 and a black at 0.3 opacity. So we should be able to hit that mark. Let's jump over here and let's do a box shadow 0013 pixels 0, and then RGBA we're going to do 0.3. That should give us a similar box shadow, and we've got it. Okay, perfect. Now next we're going to tackle the arrow at the top of the submenu, and for that we're going to use a before pseudo element to create a little box and then rotate it. So we're going to use this same selector up here. So let's grab this, and then we're going to do before, and then we're going to set a width of say 25 pixels, height 25 pixels, transform, rotate 45 degrees. Then we're going to do background color white, and actually we'll turn it black for now so that we can see where it's at. And let's look here. So we'll also need to position it. So we're going to do position absolute, top 15 pixels, left 15 pixels. Actually, I think for before elements, I actually need to add some content. So let's do content and then just a couple of empty quotes and see if that shows up. Perfect. So we've got our arrow. Now we just need to position it. So we'll use the top and left values to get it positioned where we want. So we'll do like -10, maybe 11, maybe 12. All right, -12. And then for left, we want it to not be so far to the left. So we want it to be something like maybe 25 pixels. Let's try 35. How about 45? Perfect. So that's kind of centered under the parent there. And then we'll go ahead and change the background color to black. Or not black, sorry, white. There we go. All right. So background color white. So now we have that same kind of top arrow effect. Let's take a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We're a little lower than they are. So let's move our submenu up a bit by adjusting this margin top value to something like 20 pixels. That looks better. Let's try 18. I want to be really close there. Okay, perfect. So let's save that. And that should be all we need the custom CSS for now. Let's unlock our zoom here and go to add and take a quick look at what we've got. So we've got the same kind of menu effect. Let's go on the front end and compare real quick and make sure we matched everything. So let's drag this over. So there's that. There's. Obviously the font face is different. I didn't change the font family. They've got a little bit more spacing between the logo and the menu, so I'll adjust that really quick. Go to advanced size and spacing and do like maybe 25 pixels for consistency's sake. Save that, and let's look on the front end. That looks pretty good. The download button needs a little bit more space left and right. And I'm not going to get too nitpicky about this, but I do want to try to get as close as possible. So let's go to advanced size and spacing, change the padding to 30 pixels left and right. That looks better. And then actually, let's go to the font family or the typography settings, and let's do a bigger font weight, like something like maybe 400. Nope, let's go to 600. Make that bold. Perfect. All right, with that, we're going to call the header done. Let's refresh. Okay, so we've got the header pretty much set up, and next we're going to move on to this section below it. So let's take another look at what they've got going on here. Just a big section with a big background image and an embedded video. That should be pretty straightforward. So let's jump over and knock that out. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and set the background image of this section. So go to Advanced Background and let's browse, and then we'll grab this image that we saved and drop it in there and select it. And then make sure the background size is set to cover. Now we need a big heading, a little subheading, and a green button here. So let's jump over there and do a heading. And let's go ahead and do the subheading. And then we're going to use this same link wrapper because it's like 95% of the way there. And we'll just duplicate it and drag it down here too. We'll make some adjustments to it. So this heading needs to be pretty big. Let's see what size they used on their heading. Go to computed, font size 52 pixels, and font weight is 700. So it's big and bold. So let's jump over there and match those. So 52. We're going to do color white, and then font weight, let's do 700. It's already pretty bold, so that's fantastic. And it says 3 million sites built with Elementor. Okay, and then our subheading is going to be slightly smaller with a lighter font weight, but still bigger than what we have. So we're going white, and we're going to change font size to something like 18 pixels, and then lower the font weight to 100. And then this is going to say the world's leading WordPress page builder. Okay, perfect. And then let's go ahead and set up our button here. I think the text is slightly larger on this button, but I'm not sure if that's just a visual trick because it's all filled in. And then we've got an icon in there. So this is pretty simple. It says free download. So let's double click that. Free download instead of just download. And then we're going to click add, type in icon, drop an icon into this link wrapper, which is way too big. We're going to resize it pretty tiny, but first let's get a WordPress logo in here. I believe Font Awesome has one. Yes, they do. Perfect. So let's lower that way down here. And then select the link wrapper, and we're going to go to stack child elements horizontally. And then let's open the structure pane and reorder those really quickly because we want the icon on the left. Okay, and then the text, we're going to add a little bit of left margin to, maybe like 15 pixels. And let's see. I feel like they have way more spacing above and below. So let's select that. And actually, let's just go inspect it. Why not? Jump over here, computed. That doesn't have any padding because that's a span. Where's the container at? Get down through these. 16 on top and bottom and 40 on left and right. So let's hit that mark. Advanced size and spacing. 16 on top, 16 on bottom, and 40 on the left and right. Okay, and I think their font size is also much larger. Well, it says 16 pixels. Or what are we at? 14. I think we're at 14. So let's bump that up to 16. Yes. Okay, and then let's select the link wrapper, make sure everything's centered to the middle. And next we need to make it green on the background. So let's go to Advanced Background and just change the background color to green. And we need to go Advanced Typography and change the text color to white. Perfect. And then on hover, we need to make it red, which I will just grab that color over here, I guess. Let's go ahead and pick the color from page, hover over it, grab that red. Perfect. I don't know, that might be the same pink I grabbed it before, but that's okay. We'll just call it red. So on hover, we're going to click state, go to hover, and we're going to change the text color to green on hover and the background color to this red. Is that what they did? No. They kept the text white. Perfect. So I thought that looked pretty awful. Okay. So it still needs to go red on the background color. We also need the border to be red. So advanced borders, we're going to go red, and let's save that as a global color called red. And then let's go back and do the thing that makes sense and leave this text white. Looks way better. And click the state, go back to original, and looks good, but we need maybe a bit more transition on it. Let's see. Yeah, that takes a minute for it to fade. So let's go to advanced effects, transition, and change it to something like 0.4. There we go. That's more of a gentle fade in. So now let's select our section and center everything, and then work on some spacing. So with our heading, you almost always want to adjust the line height of your headings, because usually the line height's way too big if you just leave it by default. So to get it right, we usually go to typography and change the line height. I like 1.2 for big headings. And then we'll add some margin below it. So we can do that through advanced size and spacing. Let's do 25 pixels margin on the bottom of that, and then 25 pixels margin on the bottom of this. But we'll just click and drag this one. It doesn't make a difference which way you do it. Sometimes it's easier to click and drag it. Sometimes, depending on how your layout has been built, it's easier to go into the properties pane and do it there. So let's look at how their spacing is set up. So they've got a lot more spacing between the subtext and button. So we're going to go like 50 pixels there. And let's take a look on the front end without any of the UI. And we're pretty close, but their section does have more spacing on the top and bottom. So let's look at that and see if that's padding. I would guess that it would be. No. It's kind of tough to delve through these structures sometimes. That's saying 30 pixels. No, 130. I was reading that wrong. Perfect. 130 makes way more sense. So let's jump back over here and let's do 130 pixels of padding on, for now, the top and bottom. We'll probably want to adjust the bottom padding later. So there's your heading, subheading, and actually that's a little bit too spacey. Let's bring that up a little bit. Do like 15 pixels. Perfect. That looks better, a little bit tighter. Okay, so there's the heading, subheading, and button, which we have here. And next, we're going to have this video element. Now, in Oxygen, the only elements that can have video backgrounds are sections. And we can't nest a section inside this section. So we're going to have to use a code block to do this. But it's very, very easy to do. So let's click Add. Type code block, and that puts it right below our button. Now we're going to go into PHP and HTML and just add a video element with autoplay and loop, not and loop. Typing and talking sometimes leads to mistakes. And then close that video element out. Let's also add a class to this. We'll call it hero-video. This will make it easy for us to style it with some CSS. And then we also need to add a source element, which goes like this. Source src equals URL to our video. Now we haven't uploaded the video yet, so let's save this and jump back to the WordPress admin. I'm going to go over to media and add new, and then we will just drag in that video that I already saved off of Elementor's site. Now let's click on that and grab the link over here. Perfect. Now we can jump back in here and paste that in. And then let's go ahead and save this and refresh. Actually, we didn't even need to refresh. I didn't know if it would pull in that video since we just uploaded. but it did work. But still, it's a good idea with Oxygen to save regularly. So we like to save, we'll refresh, see what we're working with, and then let's click our code block and go to CSS and start styling this thing. So if we look over here at what they have going on, let's inspect it. Let's go to computed. So they have a width of 1140 pixels, which makes sense. What I'll probably do, and what they probably did, was a max width of 1140 pixels, but a width of 100%. So it's never wider than that, but it can scale to the viewport. So let's start with that. We're also going to have, I'm guessing, a dynamic height using padding. So let's look for padding bottom. I'm not seeing it there. Maybe it's under this wrapper. Yeah, this is the one. Okay. So if we look at padding bottom, we have 641 pixels, but this is done by adding a 56.25% bottom padding, which basically allows you to, because the percentage is 56.25% of the width of the element, it allows you to maintain the aspect ratio of the video. So it's a good trick to use to keep things from skewing and looking funny as the screen scales. So let's jump over and do that. So we call this, what do we call this element? The class we gave it was hero-video. So let's jump over to the code block, and in the CSS editor of the code block, we're going to add hero-video. And we're going to set a max width of 1140 pixels, width of 100%, and then padding bottom of 56.25%, if I remember correctly. Okay, so there's our video element. It should be centered with everything else. Now we need to adjust the spacing. Let's see what they did over here. That's about the same above and below, so let's do 50 below this button. We'll just click and drag this one out. 50 pixels. And when you're dragging margins and padding in Oxygen, at the bottom right of the screen, you can see the pixel amount that you've set. So now we have a video element that seems to be working all right. It looks like it might be a little bit too large. So let's look at what we did wrong here. Let's just jump into, actually, let's add an element below it to see what's going on. Yeah, it's way, way down there. So why are you doing that? So sometimes you'll need to jump into the front end and inspect the element you just put in to see what it's doing. So why are you so big? It might be that 56.25%. I probably did something wrong there. So let's look here. Hero video. Code block. So the code block is huge. Yeah, it's all that bottom padding. You know what? Oxygen's awesome, so we might not even need that. So let's jump over and remove that and see what we get. Oxygen's really great for experimenting with stuff, especially if you're learning CSS and PHP and things like that, because you get to see the results really quickly and you can kind of dig in and play around with settings. So let's get rid of this padding bottom. Perfect. We don't even need it. Get rid of that. Okay. Now that that nonsense is out of the way, we can look at what our next element needs to be. And it looks like, I think we're down to the columns. So let's jump over here. Close this tab out. Clean up my tabs. I don't want 800 tabs. So next, these columns are pretty self-explanatory. We've just got a 3-column section with a heading and some subtext. So let's jump back over and set that up really quickly. So we have our section selected. We're going to click Add, go to Columns, and set it to 3. And then we're going to add a heading and some text. And let's change these colors to white. Change the text to white. And let's see about sizing. So that's pretty little, littler than that. Okay, let's look at the font size on this. So the heading is 25 pixels with a font weight of 700. And this is 15 pixels, font weight of 400. So that's easy to do. 25 pixels, 700. What did I say? 15 pixels, 400. Okay, and then let's just copy and paste one of these. All in one solution. And the text says, control every aspect of your web design workflow from one place. All right. Perfect. And then we'll select this column div and center these. And then let's look at the spacing they're using here. I don't like guessing on spacing because if you're a little bit off, sometimes it just looks real goofy. So let's go to computed, and it has a 16 pixel bottom margin. Perfect. So let's do that. Select the heading. And actually, let's go to advanced typography and adjust the line height like I talked about earlier. And then let's go to advanced size and spacing and do a 16 pixels bottom margin. Perfect. Now we're just going to duplicate these across the columns elements. It'd actually be easier if we go ahead and add a div. And then we'll drag these into the div, which this is totally unnecessary. You don't have to do this. It's just a convenience issue for me, just so that I can duplicate this div instead of duplicating two text elements. So let's duplicate the div. Also, we need to make sure it's centered. And I also would strongly advise using classes for things like this. We're not in this video because it's just an example of replicating another site. But if I was building this for myself or someone else, I would definitely apply classes on this first element and then duplicate it so that they all have the class. And then when you make changes, say you want to change the spacing below that heading, it affects all of those elements. That is a huge time saver. And the first time you make a bunch of elements that you need to change all at once and did not use classes, you will kick yourself. So take my word for it. So let's save that and let's jump over and look at the spacing. I think that's probably another 50 pixel bottom margin on that video. So let's drag that one out. Perfect. Okay, let's look on the front end. I think we're close here. We just tab between these. Well, let's get rid of the inspector. Yeah, we're darn close. And so our drop downs are working. Hover state on the menu's working. My account download. We're using the default fonts that Oxygen has enabled. You can use any Google font with Oxygen by default. So changing these fonts might improve the typography look a little bit better. But I think it looks pretty good. Oh, one thing we missed, actually. Let me jump over here. This video actually has rounded corners, which you would think doesn't matter much, but just tabbing between these, the rounded corners really make a difference for that. So let's do that. Let's make that video have rounded corners. So select the code block. And now we could do it with the code block, but actually since we used some custom HTML in here, we've got this video element. Let's do it with custom CSS. So let's jump into the CSS editor and let's just set the border radius to 4 pixels. And like that, we've got rounded corners. They probably have some box shadow on this too. We could actually just steal the box shadow that we're using in the header for submenus. So let's jump into style sheets, go to our custom CSS and grab that box shadow. You could also type the CSS for the video in a style sheet as well. But when I'm working with code blocks, I kind of like to consolidate things into the element. So let's add this box shadow. And it might be a bit much. Let's take a look on the front end. Actually, that looks pretty good. I don't know if they have it. No, they don't. If they do, it's much more subtle, but I kind of like the way it looks. So that's pretty good. Okay, so that's our big kind of top section and nav done. Let's go down and see how much deeper we want to go into this thing. Let's do a couple of these. Okay, these are pretty simple. So first, let's look at the background color. I think this is a pure white, but it might be. Oh well, let's just go. We'll go with the pure white. All right, so let's jump over here and let's go back to add and do a section. One thing we forgot that's very important is this header needs to be sticky. Oh no, it's going to be so hard to do. Oh wait, no it's not. Let's jump over here, select the header builder, go to sticky, enable sticky header, scroll distance of 0. We'll leave the box shadow because we want that, but we need a background color, so we'll do sticky background color pure white. Okay, that part's done. All right, so let's jump down to our section, and we have a heading, and then a 2-column section with a picture on the right, some text on the left, and then it's reversed kind of back and forth. And I grabbed a couple of these pictures off of this site, so I'll be able to use those. Let's see how big this is. This is 49 pixels and 200 weight. So let's just add a heading here. Let's copy and paste this text. Great. And 49 pixels and 200 weight. And of course our font's a little different, so it might look a little bit different, but it'll be close. So let's grab this section and we're going to center everything. And then we're going to go and create a columns element. A 2-column element is what we need here. And I think we have all the colors we need for these. We've got that pink or red that we can use there. So let's add a column and set it to 2. And on the left-hand side, we're going to have design in red, heading, some text, and then a link with a dotted underline. Oh my goodness, let's do that. All right, so let's jump over here and add some text. This is going to say design. I'm not going to style everything right away. I'm going to get it all in there first. And then some more text. And then we'll do a text link for that bottom link. Where are you at? There you are. So let's copy and paste this text in here. That one. Then we need this one. And then I can probably learn more, but I think that's a special right arrow, so I'm going to copy and paste that. And see if it'll let me. There we go. Try not to click it. Okay, because I don't really want to learn more about it right now. Okay, so we've got our basic elements we need to make it look pretty. So let's start with the top text, design. They've got some spacing between the letters. So let's go to advanced typography and start playing with that. We're going to set it to, let's go, which ones are pink? This is our pink. Let's use the pink. Yeah, let's use the pink. And we're going to change the font size. What is this? 16 pixels with a weight of 400. I don't think we need to change the weight, but we'll try it. 16 pixels and weight of 400. Yep, we were pretty much there already. Letter spacing, let's start playing with that. They've got quite a bit of spacing between those letters. That looks pretty good. But I feel like my color's off. So let's see if we can grab this color. If we're trying to copy it, we may as well try to get really close. I think that's pretty much the same red that I had. Let's paste that in. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, it's the red instead of the pink. That's what it was. Okay, and then let's select this div, this column div, and make sure everything's aligned left. We don't want it all centered. And then let's jump over and look at the heading. Inspect it. Font weight 700. Font size 36 pixels. Did I already do that? I don't think I did. 36 and 700. And again, advanced typography, we're going to want to adjust that line height a little bit. 1.2, not 1,2. Commas will tend to break things. Don't put commas in your CSS. Unless it's supposed to have commas, then it's fine. But don't use a comma instead of a period. All right, so let's add some spacing below this, like maybe 15 pixels, and add 15 pixels below this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead over here and add our image. We're going to do it as, I think, a background image. Let's try that. So let's go to advanced background, browse, and I have it saved up here. I don't remember which one was first. We'll just do this one. That's fine. Let's select that. And let me make sure. Yeah. Okay, so then we want to set it to contain and no repeat. And then left 50% and top 50%. So this is what this is going to do is let the height of our actual text govern the height of the column element instead of having some big picture that's pushing things down and having to align it. Let's go with 25, maybe 50 pixels on the bottom of this text here of margin. Let's look over here. Yeah, they got quite a bit of spacing there. Okay. So let's look. Actually, you know, their columns aren't actually exactly 50-50. We're going to want to adjust that. So let's change this column to like 70. That might be closer, maybe 60-40. Yeah, that looks better. And then we're going to want to change our learn more text to that red color. And then on hover, we want to add a dotted underline. And they actually have some border radius on that. You can see the dots kind of curve up on the right and the left. I don't really like the way that looks. Usually if I have a one side of a border, I don't have border radius on it because you get that weird curve. So we're going to not do that. So let's jump over here to the hover state. And we're going to go to advanced borders, choose bottom. We're going to do red, probably 1 pixel. And is that dotted? Dotted or dashed? Dotted, I'm going to say. But we want it bigger than that. There we go. Yep, that looks pretty good. And then let's go back to original and go to advanced effects and go to transition and set that to like 0.2. And actually, okay, this is a good lesson here. So let's jump to the front end and look at what's wrong with this. All right, so we've got this. This looks great. Sticky header, awesome. This looks pretty good. We're going to adjust the spacing here and probably line height on that heading. Look at this when we hover. See how things are moving around? We don't want that. That looks bad. So what you have to do a lot of times when you're transitioning between no border and a border is you have to have an invisible border of the same size when the thing's not hovered. So in this case, we would jump over to the builder. We would go to the normal state and we go to advanced borders, and we would set bottom to a transparent color because we don't want to actually see it of 2 pixels, and we'll set it to dotted just like our hover one. So that gives us the same spacing as we're going to have when that border appears. So right now, see how it everything kind of moves around that images scales because it's responsive. Now, nothing changes that we don't want to change. Just the border appears. That's perfect. That's what we want. Okay, so let's jump back over here and look at our spacing. This heading, I forgot to change the line height on it. So typography, whoops, typography, line height 1.2. And then they have some spacing below it, quite a bit. So we're going to do 50 pixels below this guy. Dial that in. Perfect. And then, so now that we have that set up, the next one's going to be a breeze because it's the same exact thing. They've just flip-flopped the columns. So you got a 40 on the left, 60 on the right with an image. Here we've got a 60 on the left, 40 on the right with an image. Now, I didn't save this picture, so let's save that. And I'm going to drag it up here just to get it out of my way. Oh, I did save it apparently. Perfect. It's right there. Awesome. Get it out of my way. Don't want that downloads bar. So let's jump over to here and let's duplicate our columns element. Make sure the whole columns element is selected. Let's duplicate it. And we're going to have some spacing between these. Quite a bit. Probably another 50 pixels. I like to be consistent with spacing and choose some standards. You don't want to jump between like 50 pixels for your large spacing and, 20 pixels for your large spacing, then things will look messy. So let's add 50 pixels top margin. Actually, 150 looks closer to what they did. So let's go back there and we're going to flip-flop these. So with the column selected, we're going to the structure pane. And where are we at? Nope, right here. Okay, so we've got our left div, which is 40, and our right div, which is 60. We're just going to drag the right div up to the first position, and that puts it on the left. And then we just need to change this background image to the one that's appropriate for this column element. Select it. And I think, let's take a look at what we've done here and see how it looks. So we've got our top section with a big background image, button. All the buttons have hover effects, cool drop down, and then embedded video, which is auto playing, should be auto playing. I'll fix that. Down to columns here, built for professional. Oh, let's refresh. I think our spacing, there we go. Built for professionals from freelancer to agency. Not as much spacing on this probably as what they have. We could add a bit more, maybe like 150 above and below that, or 100. So going down here, design, and then pixel perfect design in WordPress. So we've got those alternating columns going on. So I think that's pretty much the Elementor homepage in Oxygen. So let's look at theirs. We're going to try to smooth scroll this down. So grab the bar, scroll down to where we stopped, and then let's jump over to our copy and drag the bar down to where we stopped. So again, this is Elijah with the Oxygen team, and that's how to build Elementor's homepage in Oxygen. Thank you very much for watching.